When we think about power today, it almost always looks like a velvet rope.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, like it's the bouncer standing outside the club with a clipboard, or it's the admissions officer with this towering stack of college applications deciding futures.
Yeah, or even just the algorithm running in the background of your favorite app.
Mm,
You know, deciding exactly what information makes it to your feed and, well, what gets buried
exactly. We have totally equated power with the ability to filter.
to curate.
Yes, to curate, to be the one who decides who belongs on the inside of the circle and who has to stay out in the cold. It's basically the power of the gatekeeper.
Right. And if you are listening to this, you're likely someone who loves to learn, to optimize, and to make the best possible choices. You probably spend a lot of your day curating your life.
Which is why this is going to be so interesting, because today we're taking a deep dive into a text that completely flips that script.
It really does.
We are unpacking a fascinating, singular philosophical essay that argues the most formidable, ancient, and honestly destabilizing power on Earth is the exact opposite of that velvet rope. It is the power of the one who does not sort.
Which feels, frankly, incredibly counterintuitive to us.
Totally.
I mean, we live in a society built entirely on sorting from our credit scores to our social circles. The immediate assumption is that not sorting means you're weak or indifferent or you just lack standards.
Right, you're just lazy.
Exactly. But the source material we are looking at today frames this not as a weakness, but as an ancient cosmological feminine principle.
Okay, let's unpack this, because living in a world obsessed with optimizing and categorizing every second of our lives, the idea of, not sorting sounds like giving up.
It does.
It sounds totally passive. So where does this text even begin to justify that this is a form of power?
Well, to understand it, the essay asks us to travel way back before modern philosophy, before codified religion, to the very earliest creation mythologies that humanity has on record.
Like, how far back are we talking?
We are talking about something called the pre-separation state. If you look at the oldest mythologies across various cultures, they almost all contain a cultural memory of a time before lines were drawn,
Mm.
before light was divided from darkness, before the concept of human was separated from animal, or the sacred from the profane.
So a time before we even had the vocabulary to say, this is good and this is bad.
Yes, before the concept of worthy was separated from unworthy. And what's fascinating here is that the text emphasizes how, in these ancient traditions, this state of pre-separation is almost universally associated with a feminine principle.
Wait, feminine as in like women?
No,
Huh.
and the author is very clear to separate this from biological gender. This isn't about male versus female bodies at all. It's about feminine as the energetic quality of undifferentiated holding.
Undifferentiated holding.
That's a heavy phrase. Can we break that down? What does that actually look like in these myths?
Let's look at the Sumerian goddess Namu, for instance.
She was the primordial water from which all the gods and the universe itself arose. She preceded the act of naming altogether.
Oh, wow.
Think about the nature of water. Water doesn't decide which fish deserves to swim in it. It doesn't sort the kelp from the sharks and say, you belong and you don't.
Right, it just holds them.
Exactly. Nanu didn't choose which beings deserved to exist. She was simply the condition that made existence possible in the first place.
Wait, there's another one in the text too, right? A goddess of space.
Yes, the Hindu goddess Aditi. Her name literally translates to boundlessness.
Boundlessness, I love that.
And her power in those ancient Vedic texts isn't defined by what she curates or what rules she enforces, but by the radical fact that she excludes nothing. She is the mother of space itself.
It makes me think of staring up at the night sky.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
It's like looking at the stars before anyone drew lines to make constellations.
Mhm.
The stars are all there, burning just as bright, but there are no in-groups or out-groups of stars yet. There's no Big Dipper that gets to be famous and important while the random stars next to it get ignored.
Yeah, absolutely.
The sky just holds all of them equally without an agenda.
That analogy actually gets right to the physics of what the text is describing.
Yeah.
Because the sky isn't confused about the stars.
Right.
It isn't ignoring the differences between them out of ignorance. It simply operates at a level of reality that precedes the framework, where drawing those lines even makes sense. The sky is vast enough that it doesn't need to organize the stars to manage them.
But humans love drawing lines.
We really do.
We love constellations. We love sorting things into neat little boxes. So if this undifferentiated holding, this boundless sky, is so peaceful and ancient, what happened? Why did we stop doing it?
Well, because peace doesn't build empires.
Oof. Wow.
Yeah, the essay makes a hard pivot right here, going from mythology into structural sociology. It argues that human systems of domination rely entirely on the exact opposite mechanism of that primordial water.
The opposite.
They rely on the architecture of discrimination.
The architecture of discrimination, meaning the actual blueprint of how power is built today.
Think about it mechanically. If you want to build a hierarchy, you require exclusion. You literally cannot have an in-group without creating an out-group.
Because the in-group wouldn't mean anything otherwise.
Exactly. Purity systems, and this is whether we're talking about social cliques in a high school cafeteria, racial hierarchies, or rigid moral frameworks, they derive all of their power from the act of sorting.
From pointing a finger and saying, this belongs and that does not.
Right. Discrimination isn't just a psychological quirk or a personal failing. It is the primary mechanism by which domination organizes itself. The power to decide who is acceptable is the power to control the entire group.
So if someone comes along who genuinely dissolves the need to sort, they aren't just a weird outlier. They're a massive structural threat to the system itself.
A profound threat. Because let's look at how a hierarchy actually controls people. It controls them through two main levers: the threat of exclusion and the weaponization of shame.
Stick in the other stick.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
If you step out of line, we will kick you out of the VIP section. If you wear the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, we will shame you.
Right.
But if a person genuinely does not require belonging to a group that practices exclusion, you can't threaten them with being kicked out.
Because they never cared about the velvet rope in the first place.
Exactly.
If the bouncer says you can't come in and you say, that's fine, the sidewalk is just as great, the bouncer suddenly looks ridiculous. He loses all his leverage.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. And you can't leverage them with shame either, because shame requires the victim to internalize a discriminatory standard.
Oh, that is so true.
To feel shame, I have to agree with your standard of what makes someone unworthy. If this person hasn't internalized that standard, your attempts to shame them simply bounce off. They refuse to accept the premise that some people are fundamentally above and some are below.
I hear that, but practically speaking, let's push back on this a bit.
Okay.
Because if you don't judge or sort, doesn't that just make you a doormat? How do you survive in the real world without boundaries?
That is the big question.
Right. If someone is toxic or genuinely harmful, don't we need to sort them into an outgroup to protect the community? Does the text just tell us to let bad actors walk all over us?
Not at all. That is the most crucial tension in the essay, and the author anticipates that exact pushback.
Okay, good.
The text draws a very sharp line between performing inclusion out of fear and genuinely not needing to sort out of sovereignty. It's the difference between what the author calls the endlessly accommodating woman and the primordial mother.
And they are not the same thing.
They are structural opposites.
How so? Because from the outside, they might both look like people who just say yes to everything.
The endlessly accommodating woman is actually still playing the hierarchy game. She collapses her own center in order to be acceptable to others.
Oh, I see.
She accepts poor treatment or lets toxic people walk all over her because she is afraid that if she sets a boundary, she will be placed in the outgroup.
It will cost her love or approval or safety.
Yes. Her lack of boundaries is driven by hierarchy. She has placed others above herself, so she feels she can't afford to refuse them.
So she is trying to buy her way into the in-group using her own compliance as currency.
Exactly. Whereas the primordial mother operates from absolute rooted sovereignty. She isn't afraid of being unacceptable to the hierarchy.
Because she doesn't need it.
Right. She doesn't need the system to endorse her to feel stable. She doesn't push things away, not because she's appeasing anyone, but because she is so full and so grounded that the toxic behavior doesn't threaten her core existence.
The metaphor the text uses for this is stunning. I love this part.
The puddle in the ocean.
Yes. It compares the accommodating person to a puddle and the sovereign person to an ocean. You can step in a puddle and cross it without even getting your shoes wet. The puddle just yields and disappears under your boot.
It has no depth.
Right. But the ocean doesn't refuse the storm. It doesn't panic when it rains. And it's not because the ocean is weak or a doormat. It's because the ocean is vast enough to contain the storm entirely without losing its nature.
The ocean has no scarcity of self to protect.
It makes me think of the difference between a kitchen sponge and the ground outside.
Oh, I like that.
The accommodating person is like a sponge, just absorbing everything, taking on all the water and the dirt until it completely falls apart, loses its shape, and becomes useless.
Yeah.
But this sovereign, non-discriminating power is like the ground itself. It just holds whatever is standing on it. A mountain, a violent storm, a person, it holds them without breaking a sweat, without trying to absorb them, and without changing its fundamental nature.
And we see that specific grounded power personified in cultural figures around the world. What's fascinating here is how the text points to Yemoja from West African traditions.
Tell us about her.
She's the spirit of the ocean, and the mythology explicitly states that she holds the drowned and the saved with equal depth.
Wow.
She doesn't adjudicate who deserved to reach the shore and who didn't. Her power is in her infinite capacity to hold the reality of what happened. Or look at Celtic traditions, with crone figures like the Caoiche or Black Annis.
The hags of winter.
Yes, these figures hold what is dying, what is frozen, what is ugly, without recoiling. Their embrace includes the rot and the decay that the bright summer goddesses refuse to touch.
Right, because someone has to hold the winter.
Exactly, and the text emphasizes that this is not numbness. They aren't turning a blind eye to the ugliness. They perceive the wound clearly, they see the decay, and they hold it anyway.
So if sitting in this ocean-like presence forces us to drop our defenses, it brings up a really fascinating relational dynamic.
It really does.
Because the text talks about what actually happens when you interact with a person who embodies this today. When people who are used to being sorted, which, let's face it, is all of us, are around this kind of sovereign person, something strange happens to our nervous systems. We drop our armor.
We do, because the armor is only there to protect us from being judged and discarded. When you are sitting with someone who does not operate on a sorting mechanism, you slowly realize that the parts of yourself you've kept hidden, the parts you learned were unacceptable to the hierarchy, are not liabilities in their presence.
They aren't looking for a reason to kick you out of the VIP section.
No, they're not.
The text describes it as having full sight without the verdict. They see your flaws, they see where you've caused harm, but they don't use that perception as a mechanism to throw you away.
And for most people, experiencing that in the body, truly not being discriminated against, is so rare it is almost shocking.
I can imagine.
When the ordinary defenses against judgment become unnecessary, a much deeper kind of trust and essential encounter becomes possible. You aren't managing your image anymore. You are just existing.
Which brings up a really uncomfortable realization about my own brain.
Oh.
Because if I'm honest, I'm sorting constantly. I walk into a networking event and instantly my brain sorts the important people from the unimportant people, the people who can help me versus the people who will drain my time.
Oh, absolutely. We all do it.
So if I want to stop sorting, how do I fight my own biology? How does a person actually rewire themselves to be like the ocean?
Well, the text anticipates that exact struggle. It moves from the mythological and the philosophical straight into the somatic. It points out that becoming this isn't just an intellectual project.
You can't just think your way into it.
But you can't just read this essay and decide, okay, starting tomorrow, I am no longer going to discriminate. It is a somatic nervous system practice.
Because the sorting is literally encoded in our bodies. It's an evolutionary survival tactic.
It is deeply biological. Discrimination in humans is largely driven by ancient survival mechanisms. The flinch from a shadow that might be a predator. The recoil from a smell that might be toxic.
Right.
The impulse to reach toward what is familiar and pull away from what is foreign. These are biological imperatives.
They kept us alive.
Exactly. But the essay argues that these biological reflexes have been intensely hijacked and compounded by the trauma of living inside hierarchical, discriminatory social systems for generations. Society took our biological flinch and weaponized it to maintain power structures.
So the path forward isn't to pretend you don't feel the flinch. You can't just turn off thousands of years of evolution.
No, definitely not.
The text says the actual work is learning to feel the somatic flinch without obeying it. Letting the nervous system's alarm signal pass through your awareness without making a verdict based on it.
You acknowledge the alarm. You feel the discomfort of the unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And then you interrupt the automatic reaction with a critical question.
What's the question?
Is this actually danger? Or is this simply the unfamiliar? Is this a genuine boundary needed for my physical or emotional protection? Or is this a discriminatory category that I absorbed from a society that demands I sort people into boxes?
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for modern daily life.
Yeah.
It's like getting a push notification on your phone that says, warning, unknown entity.
Oh, that's perfect.
You don't ignore the notification. You don't pretend your screen is blank because that would be dangerous. You see the warning clearly,
Right.
but you don't immediately throw the phone out the window in a panic, and you don't automatically delete the file. You pause.
Yes, the pause.
You assess if it's a real virus that's going to destroy your hardware or if it's just a new app updating in a way your operating system isn't used to. You see the warning, but you retain your sovereignty over how you react to it. You don't let the alarm dictate your behavior.
That pause, that conscious assessment, is where the rewiring of the human nervous system happens. And if we zoom out and connect this to the bigger picture, this deeply internal somatic work has massive political implications.
Absolutely.
Because it dissolves the premise that the dividing line ever had ontological reality in the first place.
Wait, let's pause on that phrase. Ontological reality, meaning the idea that these lines, these categories of who is in and who is out, never actually existed in the fabric of the universe. We just made them up to hoard resources.
Precisely. Ontology is the study of what is real, of the nature of being. The essay is arguing that the velvet rope isn't real. The VIP section isn't a law of physics.
Right.
We constructed it. Think about every liberation movement in history. At their core, they are usually arguments against a particular discrimination. They are fighting to move a specific line so that more people can be included inside the circle.
Yeah, making the VIP section bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But this principle, this primordial feminine principle of non-discrimination, goes much further than arguing against a specific line. It operates from a reality where the categorization never made sense at all.
It's not fighting for a bigger VIP section. It's taking a sledgehammer to the club itself and saying, we are all just standing on the earth.
And the person who realizes that, the person who refuses to internalize a hierarchy, becomes completely ungovernable by the mechanisms those hierarchies rely upon.
Ungovernable.
You can't bribe her into sorting others on behalf of the system because she doesn't value the system's rewards. You can't threaten her with exclusion because she is the boundless sky. Her mere presence, her refusal to discriminate, is a structural challenge to the entire architecture of domination.
Because a system built entirely on the power of the velvet rope cannot compute a person who sits on the sidewalk outside, genuinely enjoying the breeze, and says, you know, the party out here is the exact same as the party in there. Actually, it's better, because out here, nobody is anxious about getting kicked out.
Exactly. It breaks the psychological spell that the hierarchy relies on.
So, bringing it all back to the core premise. We started with this modern idea of power as curation, as gatekeeping. The world looks at a person who genuinely refuses to sort, who refuses to exclude, and calls them naive.
Or a doormat.
Right. Or, if the system is paying close attention, they call them dangerous. But what the text argues they truly are is simply older.
Older than the categories. Older than the hierarchies that desperately try to contain them, and the social systems that try to sort them.
Wow.
They are a return to the pre-categorical waters of Namu. They are what remains when the arbitrary lines are dissolved.
And for you listening, think about your own day tomorrow. Think about how much mental and emotional energy we waste every single day trying to sort ourselves.
So much energy.
Trying to sort others, trying to make sure we are standing on the right side of the velvet rope, wearing the right clothes, saying the right things, associating with the right people. Imagine how liberating it might feel in your own body to just stop.
Just stop.
To let the alarm bell ring when you meet someone outside your usual category and simply decide not to obey it. To just be the ground that holds whatever is standing on it.
It does leave us with an intense final thought to consider, though.
What's that?
If this undiscriminating power is older than categories, what happens to our modern identity when we actually touch it? Because, let's be honest, our identities today are almost entirely built on the categories we claim and the groups we exclude.
I am this, which means I am not that.
Right. So if we dissolve those lines and stop sorting, do we lose who we are? Or is that the moment we finally find out who we've been all along?
That is the beautiful terror of looking at the night sky, isn't it? When you stop desperately looking for the constellations you were told to see, you're just left staring into the infinite. It's a lot to take in, but maybe that's exactly where true, unshakable power actually lives. Take that aha moment with you into your day, let the alarms ring without obeying them, and see what happens. Thanks for exploring the depths with us, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.